Well, let's now bring you more updates on that terrorist attack on the Abuja-Kaduna rail line. The update we brought you earlier is that so far 7 corpses have been recovered, and we expect NRC to provide manifest to account for all passengers. In the meantime, though, we're joined by our correspondent in Kaduna, who's been covering all the ends of that story. Chimize Enyocha joins us via phone this morning to give us an update. Well, Chimize, quite a night it must have been, a shocker, definitely. But first, do we have a clearer picture of what exactly happened?
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Coyote. From the information I got, the 6 p.m. train that took off from Abuja to Kaduna last night was attacked by the bandits around Duse village in Chukun local government area of Kaduna State at around 7:45 p.m. yesterday. The scene of the incident is just few kilometers away to the Regasat train station, which is the last transit point where the whole passengers are supposed to disembark and make their way to their homes. But unfortunately, the bandits, as I was told, planted explosive devices along the rail track, and as the train approached to that point, the bomb exploded, thereby causing the train to derail. And from what I gathered, it was at that point that the bandits, who were in their large numbers, immediately started shooting sporadically on the train. And of course, many of the passengers became afraid, and at that point, the train was immobilized. What we learned, there are conflicting stories about that the train was actually bombed, but what I gathered was that the rail track was the one that was actually bombed, that actually forced the train to derail. And immediately after that, the hoodlums started shooting sporadically on the train. It was at that point that I was told that some policemen, mobile policemen rather, who were attached to the train, engaged the bandits in a gun duel. But the policemen were also tactical not to exhaust their ammunition, because the bandits seem to have come well prepared and with enough ammunition to engage the security operatives attached to the train. It was at that point that I was told that soldiers were also mobilized to the area, including the GOC of 1 mechanized division. I was told that he was also there throughout the night to engage the bandits and to ensure that the passengers are protected. And a passenger told me that it at that point that the bandits somehow retreated, but that is not to say that they didn't go away with some people, which I was told that some people were kidnapped, even a former deputy governor of Zamfara. I don't know how true is the story, but we were told that a former deputy governor of Zamfara State was among the people that were taken away, including a pregnant woman and her son. They were all taken away by the bandits before the arrival of the soldiers. After the whole thing, I was told that they had to stay inside the bush, the passengers under the cover of soldiers till about 1 a.m. This morning, when they were now taken to the main road, that's the Kaduna-Abuja highway, where they walked up to 45 kilometers by foot. They had to walk because there was no way that buses will come into the bush to pick them, so they have to trek from the rail track where the incident occurred up to the Abuja-Kaduna highway, which is about 45 kilometers. And it took them about 2 hours, according to my sources, to get to the main road. From there, they were conveyed in buses to the 44 Army Reference Hospital, which is located in the Kaduna State capital, while those who sustained injuries were immediately given medical attention.
This is coming on the back of the explosion that you reported in Igabi, the attack on the airport, which was foiled, but sadly, Nama official was killed. And now we have this one, shocking brazen, and it's just heart-wrenching to hear that people may have been kidnapped, people have died, and you know the aftermath alone is just mind-boggling. But it's also been reported that this attack happened for about an hour. In terms of the timeline as to the response, the attack duration, and how this was quelled, what more can you tell us?
Well, from what I also gathered, I said earlier on, the incident occurred around 7:45 p.m. Because usually it's a 2-hour train from Abuja to the Gasa train station. So if you minus 7:45, it will give you about 15 minutes to the last transit point, which is the Gasa train station. But what I gathered from my sources was that, don't forget that there are security operatives attached permanently to the train from either from Abuja or from Kaduna to Abuja. So they were the first people that actually engaged, and I was told that around 9 p.m. that the soldiers arrived to the scene around 9 p.m. and immediately engaged the bandits in a gun duel. So if you look at the prompt response for time, it could be an hour or so.
And now let's talk about the people on the train, the passengers. Sadly, we've lost some of them. I understand that more are injured. In terms of the casualty figures, the kind of care they're getting right now, and protection as well, what do we know about those passengers?
Well, I also gathered that about 6 to 9 people were shot to death, were killed, while several others sustained various degree of injuries. What we don't know is the stable condition of those that were shot. But what I know that some people were killed at that point, because you don't expect a passenger to be not to be scared. But according to what I gathered, that most of them almost passed out because of fear. So there are casualties. But the bottom line is that there were casualties. Those who actually maybe died and those who sustained injury.
Well, Chimizi, certainly we're expecting that the NRC will give us the full manifest as we have requested, and hope that we can get clarity of exactly what happened. From what guest told us earlier, it's a 1,100 capacity train, 970 people on board, and this is what we have. We hope we have more details on that. But is there a history to the location of where that attack happened that you can tell us? We gather this for some 30 minutes to Regasa or thereabout. Is there a history to that particular location of where that thing happened? Maybe it's something that could have been foreseen.
Well, this is not the first time that a train was attacked along that corridor. You know, if you recall, sometime last year, similar incident occurred.
I know that Chimizi, but I'm just saying that specific location. Is there a history to that particular location?
Yeah, you know, in Kaduna is one of the affected states where banditry has been on the rise. And where the thing actually happened, Duse is located in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State. And Chikun is one of the hotbeds of banditry in the state. So, and Chikun and Igabi, they also share common boundary. And these two local councils are highly affected by banditry. So there is a history of banditry attack on that as is in the state.
Just one more thing, Chimize. In terms of response, I imagine that the security operatives are on the trail of these terrorists, because you said this is not the first time, and of course they responded. So is there an operation ongoing right now from what you gather? And have you heard anything from the NRC, just to be sure?
Well, I have not heard from NRC, but I know that the one division of the Nigerian Army and other security agencies in the state, there are so many operations going on within that Abuja-Kaduna axis. So I was told that since yesterday, they have been deployed not only along the red track, but actually along the Abuja-Kaduna highway and inside the forest, apparently to to take the battle to the enclave of these bandits. It's not as if that the security guys are not doing anything. They are. Even yesterday also, when we went to the Kaduna International Airport to get an update of what actually happened on Saturday when the terrorists killed Nama staff, the troops were also deployed not only at the airport but around the general area where these guys are sometimes, they capitalize on the vulnerability of the citizens of that area. Sometimes they have informants who also give them information about the operational modes of the security agency. So it's becoming a complex situation that if you are dealing with one problem, another one is coming up elsewhere. So you can imagine just on Saturday, they attempted to invade the Kaduna International Airport, and just yesterday again, they attacked an Abuja-Kaduna bound stretch. So something is actually fixed somewhere. The motive is what I do not know.
Well, clearly lots of issues to unravel on this one, but I'd like to thank you so much, correspondent in Kaduna, Chimize Enyocha, for those updates. So please get back to us as soon as you have more.
And please remain safe yourself.
Absolutely.
It's just yesterday we were talking about the Kaduna attack, and you heard the guest, a security consultant, talking about the fact that this could be a turf war. Some rival gangs, or is it rival bandits, we're going to call them now, trying to stamp their feet and all of that. And he was literally talking tough, saying the military is already doing their bit, but they need to assert themselves a little more. Perhaps on the back of that declaration by the president of these bandits as terrorists. My heart goes out to all of the security operatives who are doing this. Go out every day, not sure whether or not you're going to come back. And, it's literally, as the president said himself, that when he signed to join the army, he literally signed his death warrant. But at the same time, we have to do everything we can to protect them. I'm sincerely at a loss right now as to what exactly is happening, because we're not fighting this battle for the first time. It's lasted for so long, and I really don't know what to make of this.
I think that's the case for a lot of Nigerians. That news came as a shocker. I mean, a big shocker. You've heard of diesel, or what diesel finishing, or not having enough fuel to take the train, the whole hog, having to stop, mid-track, and then they refueled it and all that. I mean, that was shocking in itself. But you thought maybe that's the most you could hear. By the way, I've been in that train not once. I've been, and I enjoyed the ride. I mean, alternative transport. The airport was a bit congested, as it were. So take the train. It moves slowly and you have time. But thinking about the fact that, it could have been me in that train. It could have been anybody. Sadly, there were people in that train, and some of them died, a lot of them injured. I imagine the trauma. And what our correspondent said for me, which is quite instructive, which we take on our next guest on, is the fact that, you have people in the villages who give information to the bandits, and that's another angle that should be explored.
First time we're hearing that.
Oh, absolutely. So you have the security agencies fighting the conventional warfare. They have to lean on trust from the people. They have to get information from the people. But then you have cases, as has been reported, where the same people actually compromise and give information to the bandits. And let's just explore this further. We're joined on the program this morning by Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, who is a security consultant, just to get the different angles to this and perhaps a way forward. Mr. Adekoya, it's good to have you on the program. I recall the last time we had a discussion on security in Nigeria. It was on the GTI, the Global Terrorism Index. And, the point we tried to make then was, yes, the deaths, according to that report, may have dropped, but the attacks have increased. Now, we've had increase in attacks, and now increase in death toll. In fact, they're now moving to areas where you'll never really expect attacks to happen. But first, let me ask you, what do you make of this attack? Did you see it coming?
Okay, thank you. Good morning. It's a sad day for Nigeria. I would say that this is clearly a terrorist attack, and Nigerians should bound together and support the law enforcement. And our hearts and prayers go to the families of those who have lost people, those who have been abducted. It's not one of those moments where we say, I told you so. There's nothing to gloat over this situation. It's sad, sad day. Yes, we talked about the GTI index, and I did tell you then that the GTI report was not correct because there's been some level of media blackout, particularly in the Northeast. And yes, you're very correct when you say there is clearly movement from northeast to northwest, as I did tell you in that last discussion, that clearly these people are setting up shop from Niger to Abuja to Kaduna to Katsina to Sokoto, Kebbi. Even the FCTs are washed with some of these issues. Just last week, people in Chukuku area council blocked some part of the Abuja highway, protesting incessant kidnapping even in the FCT. And if you check that whole belt, the forest region between Katsina, that shares boundaries between Katsina, Kaduna, Abuja, Niger State, is awash with these activities. And yeah, so there's nothing to say than to say, yes, it was imminent. You had a probe attack on a rail track sometime last year. This is a repeat attack. You've had an attack on the airport. So clearly, this is what terrorists do. And for me, the attack is clearly a macroeconomic attack because there's a seeming campaign to cripple Kaduna State in particular. Because once you take out access to the airport, the roads are not particular safe, and the rail, what you find is that most risk companies like ours would advise people not to travel into Kaduna for at least the next 2 weeks until people have a fair sense of direction. And if that does happen, that has a major impact on economic activity in the state. So it's a terrorist attack. It is calculated. There's a strategy in play. There's a bigger target in focus. And I don't think we should just isolate it as just being your typical bandit. Kaduna State is under attack from different sides, different angles, and there's a broader strategy at play.
Just yesterday we had this conversation. You may have heard me mention it earlier in my chat with Kawade, my colleague here, about when a security consultant such as yourself said this is a turf war. It's like some rival gangs or rival bandits trying to stamp their feet to know who is deadlier or who is more virulent and all of that. Do you think there is any validity to that? And they have been declared terrorists. Are we strong enough on them, or we're still being a little kid gloves with them?
Firstly, they are terrorists, no doubt about it. I think we've played kid gloves with them for a long time in delaying in classifying them as terrorists. And that delay has seen them achieve some significant gain in holding operational space, which is an issue for territory, which they clearly do control in some of those remote areas. Now, to the other issue of if this is a tough war, it's a configuration of issues, really. There are those tough wars going on, but this has nothing to do with a tough war. This is a clear, calculated attempt. They are very deliberate. You can argue that this big push by the military into the Northwest is causing some of this reaction. You can argue that because of increased military presence on the Abuja-Kaduna highway, which is stifling them of their major source of income. Remember, I always say these people are first criminals. They have no ideology other than financial interest. They are not religious. They are not anything. They are part of an organized transnational criminal network. So let's classify them as what they are. They are criminals. Forget the terrorism is just a cloak for it. Because if it's terrorism, you don't abduct people. So clearly they've attacked a veritable platform. I travel on that train platform. I never really felt safe, maybe because of my train, particularly when you take the late night train. But this is just the chicken coming home to roost. So it goes beyond the issues of war. It's not. It goes beyond it absolutely.
Okay. Just a quick one, Mr. Adekoye. Now we know that this happens, and this is one of several such attacks on this particular rail track, Abuja-Kaduna, railway. What are the things you would propose as protection or proactive action we need to take in the event, God forbid, that such a thing could happen again?
Yes, it's a good question, but it's rather belated. You can't prevent what is already upon you. So we've gone past the point of prevention. We now have to deal with the issue. We can do a root cause analysis as to how did we get here. Maybe that is for tomorrow. But for now, whatever measures you take will be reactionary. Now, your reporter did suggest that this happened around Chico. The report from the NRC says this happened around Katari community under the Kachia local government, which is not too far from the Abuja-Kaduna highway. And this is an area that is prone and known for massive kidnap and adoption. As to what you want to do, I say this and I repeat it again, that every approach to security must be local. Okay, we must go back to that local approach. Our national security doctrine is at its best chaotic and rather confusing. We don't have that clear emphasis on granular approach to issues of security. We can't keep reacting like this. Get back local police. Let there be state police. Imagine the military. We are not even talking about defending our territorial integrity as a country. We now have a grossly domesticated military being drawn into every small reaction. I mean, there is a railway police, for crying out loud, who may still be sitting down with their head office in Lagos. I may be wrong. I don't know the latest update now. Maybe the police authorities need to come and reveal to us what's happening. They have their own intelligence. So for me, what should happen there should be a broader view to our national security posture. Because clearly something or some things are not right from northwest, northeast, north central, south, east, southwest, all across the country.
Well, I think that's a fine place to leave it. It's still a developing story, clearly, so we'll still be taking a look at this during the course of the day. In the meantime, we'd like to thank you so much, Mr. Onyekachi Adekoye, security consultant, for your thoughts on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take a break now, and when we return, we'll take a look at more issues that are of importance to you and I. Please stay with us.
From haulage to consumer goods, retail outlets, small businesses, and manufacturers, diesel is an essential commodity running these businesses. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics indicates the average cost of diesel in January 2021 stood at 225 naira per litre. The price rose to 228 naira per litre in February and 235 naira per litre in March. Compared to the first quarter of 2022, the average cost of diesel rose to 350 naira per litre in January, 450 naira per litre in February, and 650 naira per litre in March. The MBS data also indicates diesel price was 131.47 naira per litre in June 2015 when President Muhammad Buhari came into power.
In January, we used to buy at 345 naira. February, yes, the thing increased to almost 420 naira. This one now is 600 per liter. Definitely, the thing is affecting my business because normally before I used to collect 120 liter for 2 days work, but now I can't fit meet up to buy 120 liter. Now only 100 liter I used to buy.
Salako Adewale is an Abuja-based businessman. He manages a retail store. For him, the price of diesel is not just impacting on his operations. It may lead to an increase in the cost of items sold at the store.
When you look at it now, in the last 2 months, there have been consistent increase in the price of diesel from 350 to 420. As of today, yesterday, I bought diesel for 614 naira. Now, what is the effect? I'm a businessman, and each cost must have a multiplier effect on my selling price. Because for me to meet up to the current market and for me to be able to be, stabilize in the market, the need for us to increase the price of our products become very imperative. We have no choice, except we don't want to run the business at charity. And when I got in, the first things those staffs tender to me is increment in salaries. Because someone that has spent like 200 naira on the transportation before, now is even giving an evidence of him spending 500 naira. So what do I have to do? I have to increase the salaries.
According to the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, several factors are responsible for the rising cost in diesel.
Any imported product, whether it's diesel or it's not diesel, maybe the dollar sniffs, the other products, the prices goes up. So and diesel and petroleum product is part of the imported product we do in this country because locally we are not refining. So since it's dollar pro, when the dollar goes up, the money becomes, the cost of the product increases. That is one. The second reason is the Russia-Ukraine war. This war is affecting a lot of oil producers and sellers in Europe. And since we import these petroleum products, we have no choice than to go by the way things are over there because the prices of the oil has increased, refined oil.
As the situation continues to get worse, experts call on the federal government to put local refineries in order as the continued importation of refined products into the country using foreign exchange is a recipe for a continued increase in the price of petroleum products. From Abuja, Dili Omoeni, Channels Television News.
Sundry issues to discuss whenever we talk economy, but the major issue many economists tell us is that of infrastructure. And we began the program this morning by talking about an attack on one of those infrastructures. So let's begin from there this morning with Mr. Kola Ayeye, who is an economist and CEO, GDL Asset Management Limited. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Aaron Kayode, thank you very much for having me.
You must be heartbroken yourself as an investor, imagining how much investment has been made to put the rail tracks in place and then this. And okay, today it's Abuja-Kaduna. God forbid that this happens along Lagos-Ibadan Express rail track. What's the other one now? There's so many other rail tracks coming up here and there. In terms of infrastructure, those ones are coming up. Shouldn't we be talking about some form of protection for those infrastructural investments, not just by government, but by the people as well?
Thank you very much once again, and good morning. Some things astronomically spike up the cost of living and the cost of doing business. I think in any environment, we must have a fair allocation of roles. Primarily, protection of life and property is a primary duty of government. And if I recall correctly, one of the important points of the three-point agenda of this government is security. And, you know, we're approaching elections for their last term. And the scorecard is not good. It's really sad that a train gets bombed. You know, I suspect that when we have all of the facts, it's possible that some people have lost their lives. It's possible.
There have been casualties, actually.
Yes.
There have been deaths, yes.
It's possible some people will have injuries that they will carry for life, physical injuries. Depending on the emotional makeup of people, there are people who will carry emotional scars for life. We need to interrogate the effectiveness of government in approaching the matter of security, because this scorecard for 8 years is not good.
The reason I'm actually asking is because of the ease of haulage with rail tracks. Today, sadly, painfully, it is people. Sadly and painfully, it is people. Now, we are looking at a situation where we make transporting goods and services also a little easier using these routes. People are talking about rail tracks at the ports, you know, and all of that. So that's the reason I'm asking, you know, what can we do now, you know, to ensure that at least these investments don't just go. I mean, I wouldn't lay this only on government. Government definitely has its own, you know, duty about this. You heard Kaide, my colleague, ask the other question the other time from our guest about the responsibility of we citizens as well in the different localities. So in terms of ensuring that these infrastructure don't just work, but that they last, what can we do as a people, including the investors who will be using this infrastructure for haulage services?
I think we really ought to be direct and frank. How much can people really do? How much can people do in stopping terrorists and stopping bandits? I'm afraid, I think the people are struggling and doing the best that they can. People pay night guards. People pay neighborhood watches. States make significant contributions to support the police in their states. You know, when it comes to things like this, I don't know the extent to which we can protect ourselves more than we're doing. You know, one of the things that I don't understand for all of a decade or more that we've been fighting banditry and insecurity is that I'm not a security expert, but just the elementary or general knowledge that I have, isn't it that the foundational basis for security in a country and an environment is excellent intelligence? Aren't things supposed to be preempted? Isn't it that when security is effective, what actually ought to happen is that 95, 98, 99% of events are discovered before they happen. You know, so there are some things we must put on the plate of the private sector. There are things we've not done very well. There are things the citizenry hasn't done very well.
What are those things?
No, I'm saying that when it comes to security, the government owes us that.
Okay, agreed. But you know, you talked about, you know, things that need to be to be preempted and all of that. Could we have preempted the inflation figures that's just been released, 15.70 now, according to official figures that we have? Is there any way that could have been preempted and perhaps even forestalled?
Okay, you know, the matter of inflation, I think also simultaneously it was announced that the central bank has lent the government 18 trillion naira through ways and means. That's apart from official deficits. I don't see how, with the way we have managed the fiscal profile of the country, I do not see how we can run away from inflation. If government is spending hugely more than it earns, it is inflationary. Particularly when you have to fund a significant part of it locally. It's inflationary. You can't run. I mean, you have to make a choice. As at November last year, government revenues were, as at end of November, that's the last figure I've seen, were about 5.5 trillion. And debt service was 4.2 trillion. It's not going to be different this year because government has cut a budget of 17 trillion, on which debt service is going to be 7 trillion.
And we're looking at subsidy and all of that now.
And I do not think that government revenue this year will be more than 8 trillion, regardless of whatever they seek to achieve.
You forgive me, ma'am, sorry, Kadi. You forgive me, Mr. Yeye. We seem to be revolving around the same mountain.
Yes.
For sundry years. Is it that we are bereft of ideas or what? I mean, we talk about macroeconomic issues, microeconomic issues. I've been doing this job for quite a bit, and we seem to be talking about the same issues decade after decade. Is it rocket science to make the economy better?
Okay. If you permit me, I want to plead with you because there's something that's tugging at my mind. I think it's important. Give me 1 second to just go back to the matter of security, and then we'll come back to inflation, if you don't mind. Legend has it that the sitting president was GOC in Jos when soldiers in Chad crossed the borders. And, legend has it that he actually had to be called back by the sitting president at that time, President Shehu Shagari, because he was almost in N'Djamena, pushing. There are things that we all ought to ask ourselves, hard questions about how we have managed security. We have managed security in a sense where we hear that when terrorists are apprehended, they are rehabilitated, and some of them join the military. We have a sitting minister.
Some of them join the military?
Those are things, things that should never even be mentioned at all.
So those are in the realm of speculation and conspiracy theories.
What I'm saying is that you create, in my house, there are some things that nobody ever says because it's absolutely impossible. To even create an environment where some things can be contemplated is bad enough. When these issues of rehabilitations, a senior sitting senator complains about it. I don't have any personal stakes about these matters, but I'm just saying that senior people who have invested with the responsibility of protecting us ought to go back and ask themselves whether the steps they have taken may not have contributed to the failure in managing security. A sitting governor in the Middle Belt, Governor Autumn, continues to complain until he actually leaves the ruling party. In politics, to lose a sitting governor to another party is serious. And he keeps complaining about the way security is being managed.
I think it's important to actually discuss security because it has its effect on in fact...
There can't be progress without security.
Absolutely.
And
this conversation around inflation is also quite vital because people experience the insecurity and then they face the rising cost of food. But, elementary economics tells us that inflation is as a result of too much money chasing too few goods.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm not seeing that too much money in this case because if anything, disposable income has reduced. Cost of living is high. So imagine earning 30,000 naira. I mean, fairly you could afford some things, but now with the inflation rates, yes, officially is 15, but some tell is even double or triple that official figure. So what exactly do we have on our hands? I think it's important to set that foundation because, yes, we can look at the textbook definition of inflation, but it looks like there's a Nigerian definition of this inflation because I don't see the too much money. Maybe some see it, maybe you see it. I don't know. So help us understand what we're in. I've heard imported inflation, but what exactly are we facing?
Okay, the total money supply in the country is probably somewhere around 40, 45 trillion. I don't know what the current figures are, but it'll be somewhere around that. When government has borrowed 18 trillion in ways and means, it is out of that money supply that it has borrowed. Eh? And what that means is that that 18 trillion plus whatever else government has borrowed officially has crowded out the private sector.
How do you mean?
The crowding out effect is whatever government has borrowed and has taken from money supply is not available for the private sector to borrow. Now, what we have had over the years with these huge amounts of borrowing is that the private sector is being crowded out. You know, people talk about cost push inflation. That is inflation that cost is pushing. So, for example, if there is war in Ukraine and they are not producing wheat and we import wheat and the cost of wheat goes up because of reduction in supply, you know, that cost is the real cost. Cost will push it. If because of that war, the price of crude goes up, and crude is what is used to produce diesel, the cost will go up. So there's just that kind of cost. But you see, in our own economy, we must also look at what I will uniquely call, in other economies, it will have been called cost-push inflation. But there's also theft-push inflation.
Oh, that's new.
Okay. It is not new. I'm just customizing it to our environment. What do I mean by theft-push inflation? You see, if government borrows 18 trillion in ways and means, borrows a lot of money, formally, if that money is not being efficiently used, the studies have not been done. What happens in our economy is a lot of money that is mismanaged. You know where he goes? He goes and he chases foreign exchange. It pushes the exchange rate up. We have managed the economy in the last 8 years in a way that if you looked at it, it would suggest that government is the more efficient manager of resources. You know, the government budget in 2015 was 5 trillion. This year is 17 trillion.
And this is why you say that it is pushing the private sector.
Yeah.
And what's the implication of that?
That's what you're seeing, that all of us are running very hard to remain on the same spot. When they talk about so much money, you can't find it. A lot of the money that is available is being borrowed and spent fiscally.
That's what the CBN governor, pardon me, meant when he said imported inflation. Because if this, all of this is chasing forex,
yes.
And you know what it is with manufacturers now. In fact, they had almost the whole day having to talk about this issue of forex. So is this what the CBN governor means by imported inflation?
There are two. First of all, imported inflation means that because you are import dependent, anything you import, when its international prices goes up, you don't have control on it. So, for example, all the things we import, you know, if it goes up, we import. So, for example, you see the dollar itself is also an economy that has inflation, albeit very low, 2.x%. So, whatever we import from America, we have imported at 2-point-something%. That's one level of imported inflation. But you know, there's a worse one. The worst one is that the naira does not maintain its value relative to the dollars. And so as it is devaluing, the cost of things are going up. And I'm saying one of the things that causes that devaluation is that when a lot of resources that are being allocated locally, including borrowed money, including money that is borrowed by government, when it's not being efficiently managed, it just gets into pockets that chases foreign currency.
I'm still a little befuddled by the question of production, because we hear that over and over again that, look, if we don't produce, we continue to put a lot of pressure on our local foreign currency. But we'll come to that after Malkwe's question for you in Abuja. Malkwe.
Well, I'd like to go back. I know that we're talking about inflation right now, and we're talking about how all of these are related: security, investment, too much money chasing too few goods, and you know what exactly is happening, why we cannot see the money according to Kadi. But what I'd like to ask you, as also someone who is putting money into this economy, is if you were an investor in a place like Kaduna, what would it take to reassure you that indeed all is back on track and that your investments were safe?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Okay, so the question essentially,
I just asked what it would take to assure you, if you were an investor in a place like Kaduna, what it would take to assure you that, you know, all will be well and that your investments are safe.
Okay, in a place like Kaduna, is indeed any place that has suffered insecurity, it's tough. It will be hard for an investor who is not yet already there to make the decision to come there. You don't willingly, you are not likely to willingly walk into a war front. But if it's where you're already living, then you do whatever you need to protect yourself. And I think what you've just asked underscores the importance of our getting the issue of security right. And I'll say again, Makwe, if today, if the average person was still on the drawing board thinking of taking a project to a place that was bombed, you are likely to take a second look at the project. That's the reality. I think that at the minimum, security is important. If I do not think that an investment I'm putting on ground is safe and somebody may just wake up and bomb it, except I'm already there, and then I will not think of how to get government to work with me to protect it, I'm not likely to be eager to go there. And that's the truth. That's the truth.
Well, I mean, that's for people who are outside. But, we do know that in the last couple of months, in fact, years, the Kaduna state government has been working quite hard to make sure that investors come into the state. They have pretty good indices when it comes to ease of doing business in the country. And we've seen some, significant progress in terms of infrastructure being put down in the state, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, this Kaduna rail line was also one of the will I say one of the things that has made business easy between Kaduna and Abuja. Of course, the fact that Kaduna also has an airport. Don't forget that when the Abuja airport was shut for months, passengers had to land in Kaduna, then come via rail and sometimes road to Abuja. So, I mean, Kaduna has been central in many ways to Nigeria's developing economy, and talking about diversifying the economy as well. In this sort of situation, what would you say investors would require as a source of assurance? Because some people will say this is just, yes, it's a very significant attack, and it's coming no less than 48 hours after we saw another attempted attack on the international airport. And these are critical transport infrastructure. But nonetheless, if you look at the trajectory, they will argue that they're one-offs. What would it take to reassure investors, whom you know very well, that this truly are one-offs?
But Mark, are they one-offs? I think we need to say some things quite frankly and quite honestly. The governor of Kaduna State has worked very hard. He's worked hard to attract investment, and we must concede a great measure of success to him. But perhaps the results will have been much more if there weren't concerns around security. We need to tell ourselves hard truths. Government must succeed in putting down insecurity. This has gone on too long. And if novel measures are taken to contain insecurity and they are not working, then they must go back to the drawing board. And people will start to talk again about the entire security apparatus of the country, including even the issues of the constitutional provisions for policing, and whether we will need state policing or regional policing. The current architecture is not producing the right kind of. Let me give you an example. I mean, my late father, he went on. He died a year or two ago, but my dad is very close to where he comes from. Growing up, there was hardly a month that he didn't go to Ilesha because he was very attached to Ilesha. A couple of years ago, and this is not Kaduna, this is Lagos, 2 or 3 years ago, when insecurity got very high in Osun State. So when I called him, I said, Dad, I hope that you are, I want to talk to you about the frequency we go to. It's not a secular, you don't need to advise me, I've advised myself. And that's a man that used to show up in Ilesha once a month. The last 18, 24 months of his life, that changed. What we need to say to government is what you have done. You've worked hard, but a number of the things you've done has not worked, and we need to deal with it. I mean, let's put ourselves in the shoes of an investor who wants to spend $1 billion, 2, 5, 10 to put a project in Kaduna, and then hears about this bombing. And a few days ago also heard about the attack on the airport. Our job is not to tell them they are one-offs. Our job is to make sure it doesn't happen.
And also reassure them. And I think that's the point we're trying to make.
So that's what I'm asking you, what it would take. You know, what do you think that the government must put in place to give that level of reassurance? It's not just words. It's something that, you know, reassures indeed the investor that his money is safe.
Well, you know, what I understand about other crimes where security works is that the quality of intelligence is critical to security. So if we're doing the right things with intelligence, and if there are several attempts that we are able to preempt, but it does not go public, then some of our leaders, the leading figures in our intelligence services, should be engaging, you know, their corollaries or the intelligence officers of the key embassies to let them know that yes, we dropped 2, but in confidence, these are the other things we've been doing, and these are the things we preempted. But it's not our job to alarm the.
One of the things, my apologies, Mr. One of the things that we lose from the questions that Malcolm has asked, which I wanted to ask you earlier, I just thought we should just, you know, segue into the other conversation, is one of the things we lose from what you are saying is not just the investments, is jobs, is employment. And we all know that unemployment is a catalyst for insecurity. Now, you talked about all the effort that the governor of Kaduna State has put into it, attracting investments, having a card invest every year to ensure that investors come and then jobs are created and all of that. And now this. And this is not the first, and just as you asked the question the other time, and God forbid that this would continue. What then? What more can government do when all efforts are being made to provide employment, to provide investment-friendly environments, and yet insecurity wouldn't abate by people who are enemies of state?
So government has a job to do. That job is providing us security. If security incidents, what looks like terrorist incidents, happen, claim lives, destroy property, destroy public infrastructure, government then must communicate to us that the job they're doing is much better than we think. And even if they don't tell us, then they need to communicate to existing investors, prospective investors, including international investors, to let them see how the measures they are taking are effective. I have my concerns. If I was one of those investors, there are questions I will ask.
Absolutely.
And it's in those kind of fora that those questions should be addressed. I will ask why that it appears unconventional to allow ex-terrorists who recant to be rehabilitated in a way that does not give the populace assurance that there may not be sleeps. Those are the questions that I think these investors will ask them.
So clearly in communication, reassurance is very important now.
It is.
As we wind down, I need you to also maybe put the lead on the conversation around inflation. The NPR retained the rates. I mean, there were expectations that maybe things will change, especially in the face of all the inflation. There's the fiscal policies, the monetary policies. In fact, the CBN asked, the fiscal authorities to try and look for creative ways to beat down this inflation and all of that. So we have a raging bull inflation, which has its effects on security. Security, of course, has its effect on the economy. Who should take a hold of the horns of this raging bull moving forward? Because clearly we need to get a handle on this.
Let's tell ourselves the hard facts. The kind of budgets that we are running and the kind of deficits that we are incurring will continue to create inflation. Don't let anybody, there is no magic. You cannot have a 17 trillion budget, which is this year's budget, on which I suspect that the deficit will be anywhere between 6 and 8 trillion and not have inflation. There will be inflation. The only times inflation will stop, you see, if you say the challenge with Nigeria is not expenditure, but revenue. First of all, get the revenue up. And you know some of the other things. Oil prices rise now, and we still continue to have deficits. How is the matter of oil theft being tackled? How is the matter of income leakages being tackled?
You know, Mr. A, each time we talk about the economy, it's just like an onion.
You did several peels, several layers.
You peel one and then you come up with another. You peel one, you come up with another. And we just have to find a way around it.
Don't forget the tears that come with the onions.
And the tears that come with the onion.
You know,
especially depending also on the size of the onion.
One of the things you guys will find is that, you know, in my small corner, I've concluded that until we get our politics right, we won't get our economy right.
Well, politics and policies, they seem to be
go together,
sine qua non. Kolaya, economist and CEO, GDL Asset Management Limited. Thank you so much for your perspective.
Thank you very much.
Clearly,
Thank you.
Didn't quite go the way we wanted it to go this morning, but it's equally very relevant. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next stop is another economy we've not been paying attention to. It's sports. After now.
Football lovers, Super Eagles supporters, and they know football as well. They've been praying, cheering for the team. They should continue in that manner. And we can promise them at the end of the day, everybody will be happy at the end of that game. So they should keep the support high. Fill up the stadium tomorrow and cheer Nigeria. Score goals. Because opportunity rarely come, you know, in high-level matches like this. So when you have a chance, you have to take it.
You know, amidst all of the insecurity challenges we have, economic challenges we're faced with, there's still bright spots that we all look forward to. In fact, some people live for those moments. Football is one of them, and we're paying attention to that this morning. The second leg of that all-important playoff with Ghana takes place later on today. You've listened to the management of the Super Eagles, what is expected, what they expect from you and I. And this morning we're having the all-important conversation with someone whom you may know as headmaster. I think I recall that more than even his actual name. Mutiu Adepoju joins us this morning, ex-Super Eagles midfielder, ex-international player. He's appeared for the country in 3 World Cups, as many Africa Cup of Nations, with 48 caps for the full side and 6 goals. It's great to have you on the program, headmaster. So let's go to school, shall we? We had the first leg. Good morning. He joins us from Ibadan, by the way. It's interesting to see you're back to where you started from, Shooting Stars. Well, you know, let's put that history aside for a moment and talk about the match we have today. So we had the first leg in Ghana. We have a second leg today. What do you think we should have learned from that first leg? Because there was a lot of hype, and you know there was expectations, Jollof Derby, and all of that, but it didn't quite live up to the expectations. So first, what should we have learned from that first match moving into today's match?
Well, I think, we should have learned that, Ghana has changed, from what we saw at the AFCON. Everybody saw that, Ghana was, eliminated from the group stage. And, I've always been saying it, that, anytime Ghana is playing against Nigeria, we are seeing, different, Ghana, no matter what they might have done, earlier. But, this time around, I think, they have come and, they have changed, and, they really wanted to win. But I believe that, I mean, we have capacity, we have the players that, I mean, is going to give us, I mean, the result and, I mean, qualify us for the World Cup.
So what we have on our hands tonight or this evening is a tricky one because of the rules, the away goal rule. So if the match ends 1-1, for example, Ghana qualifies. So it's a bit tricky on our hands. So how should we approach this game? I know we're a bit cautious during the match in Ghana, but what should be our thinking, our game plan for this game?
Well, I mean, our game plan should be, I mean, go all out. Yeah, although it's, I mean, very, very, tricky, like you said, that, I mean, if, I mean, they score a goal, I mean, it's going to be, I mean, very, very difficult. But the fact is that, I mean, it still remains that, I mean, we are playing at home. We should have, I mean, the support of, I mean, our fans, and, I mean, that should carry, I mean, the players. They all know what is at stake. I mean, because playing in the World Cup, I mean, is the highest, and every footballer will want to play. I mean, I have the feel of, I mean, playing in the World Cup, and I mean, I'm very sure that, I mean, our players, I mean, they are going to go for it. And we should just, I mean, go all out, try and, I mean, take our chances. I mean, we're going to have, I mean, opportunities of scoring. I mean, we should take, I mean, those chances. I mean, and without, I mean, leaving behind or I mean, manning our defense, knowing fully well that, I mean, they have, I mean, great players, I mean, that can, I mean, put, I mean, a lot of, I mean, threat on our defense.
Well, I recall the coach, Austin Eguavon, saying post-match, having an interview with the media, and one of the things he said was that he wasn't happy with the way we were letting them win some balls and get into spaces. Is that something you also noticed, and what do you think
yes,
opened
actually,
up that
I
space?
noticed, I mean, it's in the first leg, and we allowed, I mean, them to get, I mean, the ball in the midfield, I mean, so often, and I mean, they try and go on counter attack. I mean, the marking should be very, very tight, and I mean, the midfield, I mean, should be, I mean, more tighter than, I mean, what we had in Ghana. And we should, I mean, just, I mean, try and as much as possible to break in from the wings. I believe, I mean, we're going to create, I mean, a lot of, I mean, threat, a lot of havoc if we go from the wing.
The operative, is it phrase or clause now for me, is we allowed them. How do you think that happens? Or, well, from your experience, how does that happen?
Well, if you give, I mean, too much space for their, I mean, players, I mean, allowing them to get, I mean, the ball in the midfield, what, I mean, is called, I mean, loose balls, and then you allow them to get it and, I mean, get balanced and face you. It's going to be very difficult. The most important thing is, I mean, giving them tight marking, and, I mean, not allowing them to get, I mean, the ball and face, I mean, you.
Well, let me confess to you, as I have to several other people, I always watch any match that I'm emotionally connected to with one side of my eye, because I don't want my blood pressure to be raised. But the bit of it that I watched from time to time, it seemed like the Eagles were a little too cautious, not wanting to concede a goal and all of that. Is that something you also noticed? And is there a way we could have done any better than we did, being an away match?
Well, I mean, the fact remains that, I mean, in a football game, I mean, you must, I mean, watch your defense as well as, I mean, when you are attacking, you must know that, I mean, your defense too, you have to man it and, I mean, make it, I mean, tighter and stronger. So if, I mean, the Eagles, I mean, being very cautious, I think, I mean, it's normal, but the only thing they have to do is, I mean, when going into the attack, I mean, they should go with all, I mean, force and everything to make sure that, I mean, they make use of, I mean, that attack.
Twice you have mentioned the defense. Is there something you noticed?
Well,
or is it because it's your space?
I noticed that, I mean, whenever we are attacking and, I mean, a long ball and they win the ball, a long ball is, I mean, given to their attackers, sometimes, I mean, they beat us, I mean, to it. I mean, there should be more tighter marking so that, I mean, we'll get I mean, the ball as soon as possible so that we can go back on the attack.
Okay, let's take this to Markwe now. I tell you, Markwe is a huge football fan, and it will shock you the kind of analysis you get from her. Markwe?
Are you setting me up, Coyote? But, you know, I'm going to go past what you've just said. I know that the match is happening here in Abuja, in the Federal Capital Territory. I do not know if you have any apprehensions about location and the stadium itself. Have you played here before? And, you know, do you exercise any apprehensions about the MK Abiola Stadium where they will be playing today?
Well, I don't have any problem with MK Abiola Stadium. I mean, it's a very, very beautiful edifice, and I mean, the newly installed things. I mean, there the pitch itself, looking at it on TV, looks very great, and I mean, looks like somewhere that you can play good football. I've played there once. I mean, though it was an invitational game. But it's a very, very good stadium, which I believe the players will be able to express themselves in the match today.
It's very important that we put that, you know, because we know that football, much as it's about the game, we also know that there's plenty of, you know, psychology around it. There's plenty of talk around even jerseys that the team should wear, the jerseys that bring good luck and all that sort of talk. But I'd like to know, I mean, today the federal government has asked, I think, civil service has asked workers to close at 1 o'clock today so that the stadium can be filled. We are hoping that indeed the stadium is filled today. Looking at the permutations, I mean, I'm looking at a few tweets here. One of them is from Pastor Law, who says, to douse tension and play with lots of confidence, the Super Eagles have to target an early goal. They should try to be cautious and intelligent in their defense line. How big do you think that this will be a motivator for the Super Eagles? Are you confident of an early goal?
Well, you know, until the match is played, you you don't know what is going to happen, because the determinant is the opponent too, and I believe we have the capacity, and scoring early goals, like you said, is going to be very, very good, because the more that they are coming, the more that the time is going, the more confidence the opponents will have, and might be very, very bad for us. So early goal is very important, but we shouldn't take it as if it's the end of it. We can score a goal any moment, any time, but I just think that they should go all out right from the beginning to make sure that we score a goal at least for a start.
For your ratings, what would you say? What do you expect? I know that people are going to be betting on this game, but I'm not talking about the people who are betting now, but looking at our chances, if you were to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, like we have a perfect score, where do you expect the Super Eagles to be playing today?
Well, I think, I expect, the Super Eagles to be playing to their highest, capacity. We have, the players, and they are all doing well in their clubs, their various clubs, and they just, need to put, that, because, that's what everybody wants. I believe, we have, players, it's going to be a 50-50, because, we played, 0-0 in Kumasi a few days ago. But I think, we have the capacity, and I will give the Super Eagles, 7 over 10 opportunity of winning this.
It's interesting you say 50-50, so it doesn't look like being at home confers an advantage on us. We understand that $12 million is at stake in this particular game. Isn't that motivation enough for us to want to take, at least to bring this ticket home?
Yeah, it's, I mean, motivational enough, but I'm not going to go into the monetary aspect of it. The motivation for the players, I mean, it's just, I mean, playing in the World Cup. I mean, I think, I mean, that's the highest, and I mean, aside, I mean, the monetary aspect of it, the World Cup itself is a motivation for them to want to go and play, and I mean, to play and qualify today, I mean, in today's game.
Okay, so let's maybe preview the team. You talked about the wings as well, you know, Moses Simon. There was this right player in Ghana who has sort of given him some issues. And we saw the speed, the kind of burst we saw from the Ghanaian. So in terms of the team now, the team plan, do you expect any changes, or would you be maybe advising some changes to the team from the one we saw the last time out?
Well, I mean, you know, I'm not the coach, and the coaches, I mean, you know, the players that they have, I mean, at the camp right now, and it's going to depend on their form and everything. But I mean, I will expect, I mean, one or two changes, I mean, in the team from what we saw in Kumasi.
So, what style of play? I didn't quite. I mean, I didn't see the team that played against Egypt at the AFCON. I didn't quite see the movement of ball that way. And I think you talked about that, trying to, you know, feed the strikers straight from the defenders. And, you know, you still had the midfield. There was, I mean, we know Nigerian style of play. We string the passes, we sort of confuse the opponents, and we hit them, boom, dictates the play. So what sort of play do you see us building here, or do you think will be very effective in this match?
Well, all I know, and I mean, I think the combination, I mean, of I mean, playing from the back, and I mean, when least expected, a long pass, I mean, to the striker, I mean, from the midfield or to the wings. So I believe, I mean, everything, the combinations, I mean, is going to be okay. But I mean, playing from the back, long one, always, I mean, it's going to be to our detriment. And I just, I mean, think that, I mean, we should play passing game, and I mean, going from the wings, I mean, it's going to be very, very important.
Just a quick one from you on local content for our football. We try to ask this question all the time. When you were, you know, playing, I mean, you know, the previous years of your playing was always, I mean, ICC Shooting Stars had largely local players and all of that, and so did many of those clubs at the time. So in terms of local content for our football, what do you think we should be doing?
Well, I mean, change, I mean, the ways entirely. I believe, I mean, yeah, there are some clubs in Nigeria that are professional enough, but I mean, it is not enough. I believe, I mean, we should change, I mean, the narratives, and there are certain things that, I mean, should be put in place in which, I mean, it will make us, I mean, more professional and do things, I mean, the right way and the modern way. I think it's, I mean, very, very important, I mean, for the clubs to do that.
Well, we won't let you go, Headmaster, without getting a prediction from you. What do you think? 1-0, 2-0, 4-0? What are your thoughts?
4-0 will be very difficult because Ghana will come all out too.
Absolutely.
But I mean, if we can get 2 goals, I mean, it's okay.
Okay, 2-0, you heard that. I would like to thank you so much, Mutiu Adepoju. It's good to see you again, I must say. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Well, he already definitely responded to this question, if I can say that. Marco already took it. It was from Law Alpha, talking about dousing tension and playing with lots of confidence so that the Super Eagles have to target an early goal. So we are not under pressure. I guess we can leave that there.
Well, this next one from Victor Asa is on security. And it says security and lack of it in Nigeria is not one-off at all. We can't tackle inflation and improve our economy without getting security right. For us to get a handle on these, we don't have to be politically correct. The ex-soldier said it yesterday.
And we have a few emails as well. Onishamos talking about security situation in Kaduna and Nigeria says, why has the government not considered the deployment of drones and other high-tech unmanned surveillance equipment to identify the camps and hideouts of the terrorists? The acquisition of Tucano jets, for me, has not yielded any positive results and therefore a misplaced priority. I think the deployment of unmanned drones will yield better results.
Well, Dr. Peter Idialu also talking about the same issue we raised about the Kaduna-Abuja Railway. The FG should not take this incident lightly, as this dastardly act will go a long way to paralyze the laudable rail transport system. A detailed root cause analysis needs to be carried out to obtain precise information for use to prevent future occurrence. Apart from electronic gadgets to monitor the train movement from origin to destination, it's high time the Railway Authority engaged rail track monitors, that's community folks, mostly from the points used by these terrorists.
Okay, let's take this final one from Dr. Peter Odielu. Oh, in fact, we just took that, right? Look at me. Well, thank you so much for sending in those emails. I was actually still stuck on the previous mail talking about the drones. Apparently, we've had, developments of drones. I recall the Segumi drone. It was indigenous drones and all of that. So perhaps the question will be, what is being done with those drones? In the meantime, we'd like to thank you so much for being a part of this program, for sending in your messages. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a
Well,
wonderful rest of your day.
Yes, to continue to remind us that indeed, the story in Kaduna is a developing one. There will be further clarity as we go on in the program today. So we ask you to stay here on Channels Television, where we continue to bring you the update on what is happening in Kaduna. As this morning, we understand that there will be a meeting, a security meeting, after which we understand that there will be a briefing of not just the press now, but also Nigerians in terms of what transpired yesterday, perhaps how many people have been killed, if any people at all were kidnapped as a result of that, and I think a clear manifest from the National Railway Corporation. Well, thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Goodbye.